And we're recording, hooray. I just always am, I don't know, grateful for technology because we get to meet every month like this, and we're not physically together, but through channels and unseen things. So anyways,
Magic.
yeah, magic. Oh, well, welcome everyone for those listening. Welcome to the Capacity Conversations, episode 4, where two women from each coast of the United States have challenging dialogue about self trust, transformation, and the reality most modern millennials are facing today. Do we actually have the capacity to do all the things we want to do? If you're joining us for the first time, my name is Raquel Sands. I'm a clarity strategist, web and digital designer supporting freedom seekers. That's new. I think each iteration, I'm like, who am I supporting? And well, freedom.
Freedom speakers. I love that.
Yay. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Because I was, as we've gone through each episode, like I've described, I help people either repurpose the corporate ladder or find their thing. But I feel like the through line or the commonality is they're solopreneurs, they're freelancers. So we're all looking for freedom, but it's just, it looks differently for each of us. But being able to pursue our path, peace, purpose, prosperity on our terms. So those are the people I most support. And I pass it on to my awesome co-host, Sarah, to introduce herself.
Hi. I'm so happy to be here too, Raquel. I am in the business of rewilding real estate. So I'm really excited to dive into this episode on balance today. It's equinox season. It's very soon. It's been a crazy week and time and month. So it's a good time to talk about the balance in all this. So, and what does rewilding real estate even mean? I'm sure we'll get into that and how our paths have crossed. If this is the first time you've tuned into the Capacity Conversations, Raquel and I have become quick friends in the way we see the world, but from very different, we do similar things, but in a different world and way. So I'm happy to be here to brainstorm and open the dialogue with you.
Yes. No, I love this. I'm so excited. And I will say we're both cardinal signs. So she is Libra coming in hot with the really fall spinning the transformative. And then I'm a Cancer. So we have a good balance, I feel. And so just wanted to say that because we're entering Libra season soon and honoring the Libras out there. Yes.
This is my month. I'm feeling it. This is the most grounded episode I have felt.
Yes.
Out of all the so far. I'm like, oh, here we are. Let's get real. And it's the darkest so far too. All 3 episodes before this, there's been more light in my window, and now this morning was actually dark when we got started. So it'll still brighten up.
That's true. We need the dark. I mean, we in our prep episode, we talked about the balance, and we the sun is great, the moon is also needed. Like we need the dark, we need the depth. And I think that's scary. I mean, I am not a fan of horror. Like there's elements of it. Like I like the psychological thriller in some things of like the questioning, the mystery, but it's not something I purposefully put myself in all the time. So if you all enjoy these horror walking thing, that's not my jam. To those who can, like, good for you all, you're brave. We're all brave in different ways, but it's just like, the darkness. I feel you there. So yay, Libras. Okay, cool. Well, with the dark and starting with that, we're gonna talk about I don't know if this is an extreme, but like what we talked last episode about capacity and deficiency and what does that look like? How do we define these things? So in this episode, we're talking, as we said, balance and transformation. But I'm going to start us off with like one of the extremes, which is zombies. It will all come together. Zombies is something that we've been curious about because I think it's been like a cultural phenomenon of The Walking Dead and all these, consumerist like theme parks, and it's been a whole thing. Um, I don't get it because I don't understand the concept of zombie. So that's where kind of the origin of like, what is a zombie, and then figuring out, seeing the layers of zombification in life, in our life. Um, and so I'm personally more into vampires. I'm just that's random, but yeah, I'll be talking about zombies today because I feel like what that whole question of what is a zombie, why are people interested in zombies, um it became like this quest of, so why are all the I'm left speechless because it's this interesting, like a matrix thing. We're seeing ourselves through a different lens, and it may be triggering. Maybe I'll start with that. It may be triggering to think about ourselves as zombies, because it's unsettling. So it leaves me a bit in the dark. So let's just start with the origin. Zombie origins and the etymology, because previous episode we talked a little bit about the root of things, the definition of things. So that's still, I feel like, an ongoing thing. And so I'm looking at my notes, and the word zombie comes from this Haitian French word zombie without the E, Zombi, and it's linked to Congolese words Nzambi or Zumbi, meaning spirit or God. And so that the context is in Haiti, it's a French colony. We have people who African slaves and speaking their mother tongue, but then learning French, speaking French. So you have Haitian Creole, and then their spirituality. We're going to get into faith a little bit. So thinking about faith and mystery, the unknown, what do we identify with that gives meaning? That being also kind of repurposed and changed. And so this idea of zombie um, came from this idea of what is it, or what would it be for an enslaved person or someone who is enslaved in whatever form to no longer have their sense of self. So a soul stolen, humanity erased, endless servitude. And so that's the genesis of the word zombie, from Haiti. In voodoo, which is another form of, I don't know if people feel comfortable with mysticism or spirituality or what the vernacular is, but it's another repurposed type of practice that had origins in some African countries, but then was changed and people adapted it. New Orleans has its own sort of voodoo. Um, and so the whole point of why I'm mentioning that is that it became this practice of how, if someone is dead, but dead not just physically, like in the soul, how do we free the soul? How can the soul be unified, be like return to itself, return to peace? And so all of this is context for understanding, at least for me, why the idea, like why people are so obsessed with zombies now. Because like that idea in and of itself, that it started in slavery and um has become this mass marketed, brain eating, like what happened, and why don't people understand the origin of this? Because it feels like something, I don't want my soul taken away from me or changed or be in endless servitude. And I'll touch on the career stuff where that's what it feels like. It's just a soul sucking thing to be paid for what? Like I'm not in charge of my time. I'm not in charge of my lifestyle. The work that I do goes to other agencies, companies, and I'm just serving them. I mean, I feel like comparing it to slavery is heavy, but that's what it feels like in indentured servitude. I didn't have a choice. It's put as a choice. Oh, you can choose whatever job you want.
Whatever career you want.
You can do it. Like, but I didn't even sign up for this. Like, what if I wanted to live off grid? What if I wanted to be a nomad? What if I don't actually want to be tied to a cubicle and I don't need a steady paycheck? What if I'm happy living off of the ground, like from the roots, and learning to farm for myself? So this idea of zombie for me hit really hard because it was kind of like the lack of soul, the the lack of essence, and this endless kind of hopelessness. So just wanted to kind of give the context there. That's what I mean by zombie. That's why I feel like the zombification feels so pertinent in 2025 when we're recording this in September, because there is so much in the world that we feel isolated, we feel without, like there's so much lack, we feel untethered, and at the same time we all feel like we have to do things like, what are our options? We have to just continue the status quo, and that feels like a worst fate, to be alive but not really be living, not really be thriving. So that's just context for zombie, voodoo, and like the why am I talking about this? So I want to do the leap of, okay, we set the scene of Haiti and voodoo and kind of slavery, and then how did we get to The Walking Dead and zombies eating brains and things? So I'm not a history buff, but just a few points. And also, I guess this is from ChatGPT, so disclosing AI. um, William Seabrook's The Magic Island was one movie, book turned movie, from 1929 that introduced zombies in that specific way of eating brains and kind of reimagined. So again, we're kind of reimagining. It's this continuous repurposing of the self, if we want to say it that way, because people in Haiti were repurposing or changing their spirituality, adapting, and then here we go, I guess 2.0, it's repurposing again. Then in 1932, we've got White Zombie, and then 1968 really, I think, solidified with this Night of the Living Dead, and that's really what kind of created this. I don't know, Sarah, do you know? Because you were smiling, so I just felt like, did you
I
know?
was just not, I was like, oh yeah, I've heard of that movie. Like,
Oh, okay.
it's interesting. You're breaking down the history of this. I'm like, oh, you're right. We have been, just like any cultural shift and I don't want to say conditioning, but there is this desensitization the more and more exposure we have to something. So I love that we're talking about zombies for this.
Oh, good. Okay, great. Okay,
wow,
cool.
it goes way back.
I know. Yeah, exactly. Like, and who knew? I mean, I think that's also why I love I just love us, and I love this space that we're creating, because who has the time and space and energy to think about the origin of stuff, or like the why and the how? And we talk about big things that I feel we don't have time to digest. Like, this is why we're all trying to this is not zombie stuff. I was going to say unmummify, but who knows, maybe that's the type of zombie state where we're numb, and we're trying to bring back this aliveness. So anyways, I'm just glad that we're talking about this.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so just before I take us into kind of the now and how we are becoming zombies, or are zombies, or are in denial of our zombification, some concepts, things that I kind of want us to think about are the erasure of humanity. So what does it mean, look and feel like, to no longer be human? I remember this movie with Will Smith in it. Do you remember this one? I
I
Robot.
Robot. I
Yeah,
Robot. It's a
yeah,
great movie. Yeah.
it's a great movie. Yes. And so I'm thinking about these movies where I mean, I didn't realize they were zombies at the time, the first time I watched the movie. But
Mm,
and so I was like, who are they, you know? And like what happened that there was this virus and all of a sudden, you know, what happened to humans? Because I do want to say I think there's a distinction between humans and humanity. Because we can all be humans, sentient beings to some extent, but we're not embodying our humanity. And I think that's something I think we keep putting this egg drop in our episodes about the animist and not human superiority. So I just want to briefly like touch that. That's part of, I think, the figuring out what humanity is. What does it mean to be human? And so thinking about zombification as the erasure of humanity, its soul, our values, our ethics, our essence. And we don't necessarily have to put it in a religious context, although religion also has gone through multiple cultural shifts throughout the decades and centuries. But it's like, again, who are we? What is our essence? And it's not a logical thing to think about. I really truly believe it's a body thing, and even beyond the physical body, it's something invisible in the dark. We don't know. um so that's kind of one concept. The other thing I want us to think about is stolen labor, or like the extraction of labor. So when we talk about work and even relationships, because relationships are work, and our day to day life, what are areas, where are the places where we feel in the dark, where we feel like there's more taken from us than given, or there's less reciprocity, less balance? And thinking about holistically, because we don't have control over all things in our lives. That's okay. It can feel unsettling, but that's life. Because I don't think plants and animals necessarily have control. Like, they go for the hunt, but they don't always get it. So I feel like there's this dynamic of we can't control. So what we do have control over, where do we want the reciprocity? Like in work, what are our boundaries? In relationships, where are our boundaries? So we're not just extracted from our labor, our energy, our efforts, our soul, our essence, isn't just taken all the time. um I have this quote here: when we binge zombie shows, we're really confronting our fear of being soulless workers ourselves, used up, controlled, emptied of humanity. And it doesn't have to be shows. I mean, that's the quote from ChatGPT. But when we think about zombification, when we look at movies, media, books, when we put ourselves in spaces that numb us, I keep talking about work because that's where I'm consume most of my time and energy and thinking about it. But it's really in the situations with the people where we feel drained, you know, like I'm gonna talk about vampires perhaps. Like, there's this terminology of energy vampire, of are
yeah.
we being sucked literally? And then when they
Drained.
say drained,
Yeah.
yeah.
I have a question. Can I jump
Yes,
in?
yes,
Well,
go.
you said when we're consuming this zombie specific entertainment, you're
Yeah,
saying, did you say we are facing our fear of being soulless, or yeah,
yeah,
being
running our
just
fear.
drained eternally? Or is it like we're facing our fear, or like we're feeding it, or like, or is it
Ooh.
or is it like both or neither, or does it depend on where you're at in your life?
I like that question. I feel like it's both, because I feel like when people talk about shadow work and mental health, like it's
Mm,
we're we're edging, we're getting to that point. And some people, like, I'll just talk about myself. I don't always have the energy or the capacity to talk about or get into some things, because maybe I'm already, I mean, I'll just put it out there. I feel like I'm an open book. I struggle a lot with the relationship with my mom. And so sometimes I feel like I compartmentalize that. And then I'll revisit it when I can, like a book, because it helps me. Okay, I have to focus on my relationship with my husband, or with my health, or with the work. And so it's like, where can I place my energy and attention, how much, and doing my best not to be hard on myself for not placing more or less. So I feel like with the zombie media or show, or like this mirror, like mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the whatever? Are we being humans? Are we being soulless? I feel like if we're mindlessly engaging in that, um, we're just consuming it, then I feel like we're feeding it in some ways, because we're not questioning. There's no rhetoric. But if we're engaging it in a way of like, okay, so how does that feel for me? Like, what is, I mean, I don't watch zombie shows, but
yeah.
in but with vampires, for example, like it for me, sometimes it's unsettling, like the different powers, or the different uh I don't know, strengths that they're given. And I question that. I'm like, why would anybody want to be a vampire if it's a choice? And would I? And I mean, it may seem silly, I don't know, but it makes me confront my humanity and question, what am I willing and unwilling to do? So I hope that's helpful.
Yeah. I'm thinking of a few things in my mind, but I might get to them later. So you can go on. Talk to me about vampires, because I love vampires too. I choose vampires over zombies as well.
Yes, and that could be, yeah, something's happening. And that could be its own thing. I feel like this. I don't know the origin of vampires, so maybe that'll be a part two, or like addendum thing. But this idea of like both entities are, because I wouldn't call them human. Um, both creatures, both beings lose their sense of humanity. And it's interesting to think about, like, why is a vampire, like, blood is life giving. So vampires have to sustain off of this thing of life. And supposedly they don't have souls, which is why in some vampire lore, you've got the cross, you've got holy water, you've got all these things, versus I I don't know how you really kill a zombie again. And I think that's why for me zombies feel a bit more off-putting, because okay, they eat brains, or whatever they eat. It's some sort of cannibalism. But then like there really is nothing going on. I mean, they're just the walking dead. They're just existing. But vampires seem to have, I mean, they still have brain and sensuality, and they still exist as living, or more living. And so I don't know, I feel like in some, just as I talk about it, I think I'm more comforted with vampires, because it makes more sense. Like it, I mean, maybe not sense, but it's like they're more alive than zombies that just don't, like, just die. Like, what are you doing? And I think that for me um is what's so scary about our day and age. So I guess I can get into some of the modern stuff now, that um like to wake up every day and do the same thing, or watch the news and not have any power or say in what is happening, not feel like I have any power say in my own life, is very unsettling. And I think we've all been told and shown and forced to go to school, live a certain life, and to now be in this day and age where, I mean, not to scare people, but I mean, we're in the season of horror. So let's just go.
Season of horror. Well said. All
I
right, then.
mean, please, because it's like, also maybe with that, there's a season for things. So, you know, right now it's okay. We can make it more okay. I mean, I don't think we want to be scared all the time, but right now we're just scaring ourselves a little bit, kind of maybe a shock, so that it can hopefully trigger something and we can realize something. So, um, we're in this day and age of AI, artificial intelligence, that um, quite literally takes jobs away from people, takes futures away from people, takes humanity away from people. If we over rely, if we over indulge. Um, and so for me, this thing about zombies now, we saw how it was in kind of that slavery, real slavery. Not that we're not in that format, but I just want to distinguish um, how that evolution and how now, even though it may appear that we have more access and resources, we are still being drained, literally and figuratively, but just in all ways, emotionally, environmentally, financially, um, of our sovereignty, of our essence. I told Sarah, my husband, and I, we went to Myrtle Beach, which is here on the East Coast in South Carolina, and we did this trip with my husband, and I mean, I was talking about how there's so much land, or there appears to be, rural areas, agriculture, farmlands, and it makes no sense to me how people, like, how we're forced to um, work for something that we already have access to. I mean, the land is right there, and we could all learn how to grow food and how to harvest and how to share and be communal. Um, but we don't. We've been um, compartmentalized and put in this lifestyle, in this life where we're forced to work for money, which money is invisible. Money is a concept. It's this exchange of energy in order to get what we already had access to. And so that blows my mind that we have to extract from the earth and make a zombie of the earth, um, taking the gas, the oil, the trees, all sorts of resources, minerals, that is not limitless on this earth, in order for us to create things and exchange, sell between ourselves, when there's no borders, there's no limits, there's no, like, the earth is just here living, doing its thing, and so are the other animals. And so it's interesting, it's saddening, it's heartbreaking, it's soul crunching to think about how all the things that we're doing to live the lives that we're living um are all based on extraction, and all based on like the removal of possibilities, the removal of access, and freedom. And it's replaced with this, I don't know, new idea of freedom, that you can choose to have a career, you can choose to have X amount of money, when at the end of the day, I think most of us would rather have just the time and have the energy to enjoy ourselves, to explore ourselves, and not have to do things just to do them. Um, so yeah, I mean, was deep for a road trip to the beach. But it was just, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I think if you're watching the video, I stepped away to go to the bathroom because it's morning for me, or it's early. Anyway, but I was listening to everything you said, and I would like to come in and say that what was coming to my mind was, I forget how you worded it, but it's like this idea of like the system of extraction is working really well. It's all working. Like we see this, like, why is it working this way? It's like, well, because it was designed to. Like we are all in these you could call them these institutionalized systems that we are currently watching break down, but it was set up that way, and so it's working that way. Yeah. And from my perspective, from the real estate perspective, the thing that the illusion that the idea of living off the land has been replaced by is this illusion that cities provide all of our resources. And because I grew up in rural America, in the Midwest, and then I moved to the Seattle area, and I was like, the environment sets up the mindset that there's no more land. And because there's no more land over there, it's Western Washington, the whole city, you have ocean and mountains, and it's a big problem that you're deforesting old growth trees in order to make land. So the things like the Growth Management Act, things like scarcity become very real. Especially when you throw like wildfires on top of it. It's like, the world is burning. It's ending. And I also thought of this little clip I saw from a comedian, Tim Dillon, recently. I like some of his stuff. I don't know him that well. So if you like love him or hate him, I have no affiliation. But it was a really short little clip about him saying, this generation is tired of being propagandized the way our parents and grandparents were propagandized to. And the reason is because our grandparents in some way knew that they were getting propaganda to the level that we have it today. It's nothing new. We're watching psychological operations happen with every news wave, right? We're watching it this week. Today is September 13th, 2025. A lot has happened this week. 2 people were very publicly murdered this week, and the psychological stories and the way it's being shared, it's just wild to watch. It's just wild to watch, no matter which side of it you're on. Right. And our grandparents, like the comedian was saying, they kind of settled for it. They kind of were like, yeah, whatever. We live in this like fucked up propagandized world. But as long as they were given their little piece of paradise, and that was a house with a yard and a little bit of space to themselves and food they could afford. It's not that way anymore. So like you've taken even that away. And so that's the illusion of like all this can work as long as you have your own little slice of safety and freedom. But even that is no longer sustainable, accessible, affordable. And you're asking us to believe in a system that we then feel good about bringing children up in. And then that's a whole nother can of worms. But it's like, these are the things that but the millennials are thinking about. I am not the only millennial who was scared of having children and like literally chose not to because of all of these things. And the people have told me, and maybe you too, Raquel, like, like you're never really ready. It's still a good thing for the positive. And I think while that might be true, it's not helpful.
No.
And so anyway, that's what I was thinking of. I think about the populations and where they live and how their environments affect their mindset.
Yes.
And that's what I heard in what you said of like, well, if your environment is really reinforced.
Yes.
Uh-oh, you froze. You still there?
Yeah. Same. Yeah.
Okay. We're good.
I caught the last piece. If your environment reinforces.
Oh, you will believe what your environment is is helping you believe until you put yourself in a different environment. Because I really struggle with this truth, but it is true that your environment affects you more than you affect your environment.
100%. Oh my God, 100%. I mean, this is why, at least for me, I speak about myself. COVID was such a blessing. I feel like that it wasn't a total blessing. I'm not saying that. And I'm not saying it was a blessing for everyone. I'm just saying that in my individual life, it helped me a lot because it was the first time. It was 5 years ago. I'm 33 now, so I can't do math. I was 28 when it happened. And COVID-19, for those who, I mean, I don't know who is listening, but it was a virus. Some people think it was a conspiracy. Some people, I have a friend who her dad died from COVID. And so, as anything, there's a spectrum. And for me, luckily, my family was not affected by that virus particularly, but we were affected by the cultural environmental things happening where we had to be 6 feet away, and we had to get the vaccine if we were to work in the industries where we worked. I was laid off, and it was a huge blessing because I had never had time to myself since, I don't know, a kid, since, because we're all put through the system of education. So there's no time to know who we are. Again, talking about this zombification starts early, where we're all indoctrinated in a certain way from the get-go. So there's no time to question, to think, to exist in our own way. And so I was very grateful. I learned that my nervous system was very dysregulated, and that I wanted to pursue my business, and finally had the time and energy and the income because we were getting checks, or some of us, I don't know everybody, and I was able to pay off student loans. So the environment created this opportunity for me, to, I mean, I'm talking more of a cultural environment, but also in my home environment, I was able to invest in, I don't know, a treadmill, and we got a dog, and I mean, it would just, for all of those people who are affected, please take this with loving kindness. But it was a happy time for me, to be honest. I really enjoyed being at home and figuring out myself and not being a zombie. Like, I didn't even realize that I had so much that I wanted to say and do. I would have stayed a zombie. We all probably would have been on whole other routes if COVID didn't happen, quite frankly. And
Yeah.
so I feel like maybe in some ways it was a restart button or reset button for the world. The quietness, the ability to look out the window and like just I talked to my neighbors at that time, and we would all, distance, but like, oh, your dog is friends with my dog and let's have a doggy date. And I live in Northern Virginia, type suburb city area, and we don't talk to each other. I mean, in what city type suburb area do we talk to each other? Which is another probably way of the system zombifying us, because if you don't connect with people,
It's so weird. Like, I'm sure I am not the only small town America, like rural country kid that will tell you that it is weird when we go from our small towns where people wave, say hi, like you can be half a mile away and see a wave,
oh.
but in cities, the coldness is bizarre. And not all cities are like that. Cities are very different. The Seattle freeze is real. And I will say, like, I was very shocked and affected by that. And maybe other cities aren't that way. But it's, yeah, the weird, it's weird how the more populated you get, the more like walled up, like,
yes,
it's like the bear versus man thing. It's like, okay,
Yes.
we're acknowledging that we are the most terrifying thing to each other. So why aren't we creating practices that increase trust? You know,
Yes.
why aren't we creating like systems? And you say, why aren't we? It's like, okay, we are. But yeah, there's this unawareness
Yeah.
around that. And if you aren't aware,
Wow.
if all you know is city living and you can't see it, then
Yes.
it's
God.
just, yeah, but you can just practice awareness. Just practice awareness.
No, it's okay.
So
But that's
easy.
I know, but that's the thing about unzombification is practicing awareness. And I love what you just said about it's interesting the being close with people physically. You're not close with them mentally, emotionally, whatever. And also even being close to them doesn't really make you physically close because people are still like, don't touch me, and there's just road rage and all these things. So it's just interesting. I feel like with zombies, and this will be my last bit because I really need to transfer it over to to Sarah. Um, it's just that I feel like whenever I've seen the zombie media, they always are in packs together, in groups, and I don't know if that's a group think. Like the I is lost, the individual is lost, and so it becomes a group. Like the and I feel like I see that with the extremists. Like there are people very on one side of whatever topic of health. Some people are very pro, I don't know, paleo, vegan, I don't know. And then other people are very anti. And like this can be seen in all sorts of things, like religion, politics, like everything. And I feel like the more that happens, groupthink, the less nuance and awareness and capacity for balance and paradox holding happens. So that was not in my notes. It's just something that from our what we're talking about now. I just wanted to say, and yeah, I guess it's not to avoid being with like-minded individuals, but it is to be able to question. So I'll just finish off with saying that I want us to be able to build that, like Sarah said, awareness. The word that I had in my notes is faith. I'm not a religious person, but I am a person of faith. Like I believe, I have trust, I have a sense of meaning in the unknown, in the mystery. And that can look like all sorts of things to people, which is fine. But I feel like the awareness, the ability to have faith, is so important in times where we are losing ourselves, and we're losing things around us. Because we don't want to be zombies. Who signed up to be zombies? So, um, just before I just want to say that, and I hand it off to Sarah, that cultivate your practice of awareness and faith and whatever that looks like to you.
Mm-hmm. Amen. Faith is I mean, I talked to it in previous episodes. My journey with faith has been wild. I really felt like I identified with it as an identity. Like, I am a person of faith. I am like that was my full identity, was a Christian missionary, godly daughter of God. Like that was, I felt so a part of that identity that when I lost it, in my early 20s, and when I say I lost it, I gave it up. But in the giving up process, like you just and then anyone who's gone through a major identity crisis could probably relate to this of any sort, that when you set down who you are and what you know, what comes in the wake of that is a sense of lostness, even if what you walked away from was intentional and a choice. And that's something that you mentioned earlier, is like the loss of choice is in the zombification of who you are. gets really blurry. And if you've gone through trauma from choices, even if it was the right choice for you, that gets really confusing. It gets really blurry on, well, am I a zombie? I mean, that one of the ways I came back to faith in a different way about 10 years after leaving the church, was recognizing, oh, those parts of me were good. There was good in me, even in the choices that I didn't know I was making. And so that level of awareness, I mean, for me, it was just all sorts of different practices, different resources, different tools. And a lot of it for me was listening to podcasts and storytellers, listening to the way other people think, listening to open discourse, and just allowing my mind to loosen and make up its own value system in the midst of my environment and what I have, which is one reason I'm so interested in intentional communities at this point. And like, as a real estate development, villages are real estate development. You all live in some sort of housing development. I'll get into, I guess, I'll just, I don't know where I want to start. I just was starting there of I always go straight to real estate, I feel like. But
your house is what you know a lot. Yeah, that's why it's like we talk about career, and it's interesting. I just want to say we both have different boxes. Like I talk about cubicles, and you talk about literal houses. So interesting. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's because they're the containers. So that's something that I did put in my notes that I was thinking of for this, the skills of survival. I want to rehumanize the survival game, and that's part of, for me, returning our housing and the way we live in our home and community to the wild, returning it to the wild. And that means returning it to, like, returning ourselves to the wild part of ourselves. And I feel I was going to bring up the difference between wild and feral, but suddenly I get them flipped on which is actually which. Wild, I'm 99% sure, is a creature that was born in the wild. You just are wilderness. Okay. And to humans, that's for all of our evolutionarily speaking, like, we have the village, we have what we know, and everything outside of that. If you had a map or if you didn't have a map, if you had stories or if you didn't have stories, what was beyond your borders, you mostly had your imagination and maybe what the elders of your community told you was out there. And maybe it was scary stories to keep you from, like, leaving the safety of the container. Oh,
yes.
But so that was wild. It was the great unknown. It was the thing that could eat you alive. But feral, a feral creature is something that has been domesticated and has returned back to its natural wild state. Think of roses. If you've ever, like, I bought a rose bush and then didn't trim it properly or prune it right or whatever, and it went wild again. And if you've ever grown roses, anybody, like, you know that they can just, like, go wild. I'm like, how does that happen? Am I a rose bush? Have I been so domesticated that now that I've, like, broken down some of these walls of, like, whether it's zombification or there's numbing or it's this boxed in career that I thought I needed to have. And you're right, COVID broke for me what I thought that could be or was. And it was an absolutely transformative time for what I thought was even possible, because I didn't think that level of division and hatred was possible among the people I even knew. And so that was eye-opening. That helped shift me into, like, oh, I need to learn survival skills. And so rewilding myself in a way that I was like, oh, I can see it now. I can see these boxes that we keep ourselves in, and learning professionally, even, like, the way real estate is even written. I saw, like, the money isn't real, titles aren't real, borders aren't real, and yet they run our lives. We have to have some sort of faith-based system like money, where we agree collectively that this arbitrary thing means something.
Yeah.
And even our laws, even though I don't think we live in a rule of law anymore, the idea of a rule of law is that we're going to agree that these are the rules and everyone has to play by the same rules. If you're rich, if you're poor, if you have power, if you don't have power, whatever in whatever context that means for you, it's the idea of equality, and we put our faith in that idea. And clearly that idea is breaking down, and clearly that ideas are real. Money is real. Borders are real. Like I think there's a difference in philosophy and reality. And I've become more of a realist, I think, even though in some ways I am becoming more of a philosopher, and that it's bringing the grief of groupthink. I remember going to one of my first online grief circles. I didn't even know what a grief circle was in 2020. And crying I think maybe the only American or one of two Americans on this call. And I remember like the facilitator, a friend of mine, was kind of guiding me through, like, it sounds like you're grieving the loss of individualism or individuality. Because I was like, we're all just getting, and I didn't have the answer at the time, but I saw people choosing camps. They just like were picking an ideology to believe in, and I was like, I don't want to pick. I don't want to divide. I don't want to choose a camp. I want to have open thought and discourse in an environment where that just, the only place I could get that was on Zoom, online, on video calls with people from all across the world.
Yeah.
And at this point, I don't know if that was the right answer for our humanity, going back to humans versus humanity. The first iteration of my, quote unquote business, and my first website after I got my real estate license was Home for My Humanity, because the essence, and now it's Rewilding Real Estate, but same webpage, but and I don't know. I've had such an emotional week. I'm like, feel like I could just cry. But I don't know really what makes humans, like what makes humanity human. Because with that name, with that website name, I would get questions like, are you a mission? I would lead classes or hikes or workshops or clubs or events. I mean, I'm a community-oriented person, so I was always put myself out there. And people would be like, are you a faith-based? Like, what's going on? One reason I wanted to change my name, but the faith, the conversation around faith is we believe that humans should care about each other.
Yes.
I think that was the common conversation, is like, I'm not here I was a religious person, but the people who would come to my events would show up with a sense of faith, especially my grief hikes. They would show up with, I am here because there's a greater power that has pulled me through my grief. And I think, and I'm just hypothesizing, I think what makes us human is that we want to care about each other. We are willing, and maybe like the full act of service that allows us to step outside of who we are to really help others is a really human thing. And I think that's the humanity that, like, I want us to remember. I want us to remember that even if we disagree, which we probably do on something, we can still talk about it. Like, not even dance around it, like the way that I feel like people in the early 2000s did. They're like, you're a Democrat and I'm a Republican, but we're still friends. We're still friends. Like, we just didn't talk about certain things. Over my coffee. But and then we don't even do that anymore. I actually took a screenshot of a Facebook friend of mine. Her most two recent posts were like, Oh, I'm so glad to see all of my old Facebook friends, like my old haters, come out of the woodwork so I can delete a bunch of people. And then like, oh, if you're posting about this but not posting about this, you look like an idiot and I'm gonna delete you. And it's like it's interesting the self censorship of what you even allow yourself. And there's some truth, right? I unfollow people when I feel like they get too manic or angry. I unfollowed Charlie Kirk a couple months ago because I was like, he's getting too manic. He's getting too angry, you know? And then but it's shocking to me that like murdering him is the solution to that. And so naming that and questioning this ability. And I think one of the reasons it has shaken us, our country and maybe the world the way it has is, he offered a discourse, quote unquote, open discourse on college campuses, which should be a place of open discourse.
Right.
And now I'm like, oh, have I opened a whole can of worms here just by bringing this up? It's like, yes, but it needs to be brought up because this is the humanity that I want, I want people to be welcome. And it's true, thousands of people would drive hundreds of miles to show up to ask someone like him a question about something that they know they disagree with him on. And I want to see that in smaller scale environments. And I would love to see it in more moderate environments. I consider myself politically homeless at this point. And I want to walk the middle way. I want to walk a moderate way, but I don't even know what that means anymore. And I even wonder about my own belief systems. Like, can I even defend my beliefs the way he could? Most people can't. And does defending my beliefs to that degree dig me deeper into a predetermined set of beliefs, or does it actually help me open my mind to changing my mind if the moment calls for that? And I don't know if we're ready to have our minds changed by people that we at least currently disagree with. So that was a whole ramble on belief in humanity, but I put the grief of group thing because I remembered that. We've come a long way in the past 5 years. We've come a long way in the past 10 years. I told somebody recently, like, I don't think my Facebook feed would be this hateful or divided a decade ago. I don't think we would be this cruel or this like mocking of a situation or this careless either. Like we talk about, like, it's hard to care about all the things. And if you aren't tangent to any of these stories, like, why would you care? But it seems like plenty of people are willing to look back at history, make a decision, and then share that opinion, even if they don't know much about the situation. And I have those tendencies too. So I get excited and I want to put out there, here's my thoughts, here's my opinion. And it's like, I want more human to human environments and connection, which is what I'm working on in real life. So maybe I'll kind of segue into that.
And I just wanted to say this, we're September 13th. And for those who happen to be, if you're not in the United States, September 11th is a very poignant time. And I mention it because the work I do in day-to-day is marketing. I do contract work, so I'm kind of a freelancer of sorts for, like, I've worked for Uber, and currently I'm at Fannie Mae, who does real estate of sorts. So September 11th, like, there are certain days in the year that people try to touch on or are careful to touch on. And the current administration with Trump being very make America great again, like nationalistic type, patriotism type, it felt more delicate in this year for whatever reason, because of I think, like Sarah said, there's been a like this group think, this camping of, are you this, are you that, and Fannie Mae, I've worked, full disclosure, I've worked for both Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae, and it's interesting seeing like two sides of a coin. For I'm not an expert, so what I'll just say about these two companies is that they're supposed to serve a certain um sector within real estate, homing, finance stuff within housing market. And I've worked for these two companies. They're supposed to be competitors, but they work in the same space together. And so it's interesting seeing, why are you competing for like the same slice of pie and you're serving the same slice of pie? Okay. But their approaches have been different, is what I want to say. That Fannie Mae, I think during COVID and then since then, from what I have seen, as a person in the marketing communication space, has been more of employee centric. Like they literally don't have physical buildings because they rent them out, so they're very much more remote, hybrid, or they were. And they were very much more like pro benefits, maternity leave, paternity leave, mental health, flexible Fridays. And I can say this because I work there, which is people have the flexibility. If you don't have work on Fridays by 2 p.m., you can be off. And that was ingrained in their culture for the past 5-6 years. Now with the new administration, I'm living it. So I can speak to it, that there is no more flexible Friday, mental health, blah, blah, blah. We're a Monday through Friday. You have to come in to the office. My team goes in 3 times a week. So I make my way to Washington, D.C. via Metro, because I'm not driving into D.C. It's horrible. And when I tell you that what it looks like to change a culture that of a corporation, of a group that had a completely different way of being, and like now having to change their rhetoric, like change their clothes or change their vibe, whatever we want to call it. I talked about September 11th, which is they would have had a different approach, is what I'm saying. But they're literally changing the way they speak for fear. Like companies are scared, people are scared. And September 11th, for context of that, is when September 11th of 2001, playing. I don't want to make this a cultural, like I'm not anti-Muslim or anything, but it became an anti-Muslim thing, where I don't know what they were, what group they were a part of, but basically they were on like a suicide mission to use vehicles. So in this instance, it were airplanes or air transportation vehicles. One was in New York that hit the Twin Towers. One was here, hit the Pentagon, and I forget the third one. So all of us millennials went through that here in the United States. We witnessed and were affected in different ways. And so that's been every year, this kind of anniversary grief of the people who were affected very literally, but then just as a nation, as a country. And so coming back to this, what I'm talking about, this company that had a very different ethos and like culture to it, and would have addressed or like spoken to this grief in a different way as a group, and now having to think about it and address it in a different way because of like they're being forced to. It's just all I want to say with this is that it's there's so many layers to what this unzombification that we're going through as a nation, as a community of people all over the world, but here in particular in the United States. And I don't know, it's just I don't have answers. It's really hard. It's really hard because I also consider myself to be moderate. I try to lean on the left, on the progressive, because I don't align as much with the, and I will say the left and right is different in Latin America, like the way I understand it. I think being, or maybe I do. I'm not a political person, but when we say in Spanish, it's like left is being a communist, and that's not what we mean in English. I feel like it's more socialist, social democratic, progressive, even maybe some independent type. Um, so, anyways, I also, like Sarah, identify moderately, because it's like I don't want somebody to tell me how to think or how to be, like what's happening with this literal company, and I don't want to have to be um like corralled and forced into a certain thing without even knowing. And I love how you talked about, even what if I do that thing or think that way, but then in multiple scenarios, like we don't even know the extent of how our ethics could play out in multiple ways. And so it's like, why am I going to choose one box? Like, I don't even know. So I had no point really, just to say that also all the grief, like this was a heavy week, and the context of the cultural stuff. And I'm also there with you figuring it out. And yeah,
It's
I had no.
well, I didn't realize that essentially like DC institutions felt like they couldn't address 9/11 in the same way because I saw a 9/11 post, I think that mid-morning, and it didn't even click that it was 9/11. And this was someone I had scheduled. I had created 9/11 social media content for the people I do that for. And so I knew it was this week. Like I knew it was this, I made the content earlier this week. But earlier this week, I was obsessed with the Irina story, the Ukrainian refugee girl who was murdered on the train. I was, and this is, I'm a little manic this way, but I like to dig into these stories because people were saying no one helped her. And that was the humanity that my mind and eyes and ears latched on. I was like, what do you mean nobody helped her? Nobody came to her aid. So I was, that's a whole nother thing. And so anyway, 9/11, and I was like, wait, that's today? Like, oh, it's, how am I supposed to feel? Like, how am, because there's layers and layers to each one of those things that happened this week. And the way my humanity feels stripped, my heart is hardened. My mind, and these are the 3 locations of real estate that I think about all the time. And I don't know if I've mentioned them on a previous episode, so I want to break them down, because to me it's how I connect with my humanity and my body, and it's become kind of this philosophy for my business on in the real estate space. In a ton of mindset training, they say like the most important real estate you can focus on, they say this to real estate professionals, is the real estate between your ears, or like the 8 inches between your temples, or whatever. And it's your mind, it's your mindset. I feel like this is familiar. I feel like I've said this here before, but I talk about it a lot now, and because I'm still trying to sense into this in a way that other people can relate to. So tell me how this lands. So the real estate of the mind, and that's one thing that I'm like, with zombies, it's really interesting because I feel like zombies are mindless. That's why they eat brains. They want that thing back that I think makes us human, which is the ability to think cognitively, rationally, with reason, with awareness, with full open eyes. I mean, there's a ton of modalities and programs and spirituality around just your vision, and how like the physical practices of the eyes and vision and softening and gaze and all the things relates to how you see the world and you see yourself. And turns out that's everything. That is your perception. That is your perspective. That's how you are bringing the information into who you are. And if that's, bought and paid for, if that's been so hardened you hate everything you see, if that's numb, if that's just like nothing has any meaning anymore. You know, a big reason zombies even came into this conversation is because I heard this episode a long time ago on the Embodiment podcast with John Vervaeke called Bullshit, Meaning, and Zombies. And at the beginning I was looking, I looked it up. I'm like, what episode was that? And I'll link it in the show notes here. But it's a very good episode. And just in the description, I'm like, oh, right, they talk about cities in that one too. And like how this this cultural group, it does lead to alienation, because if you're alienating yourself in order, you're giving up part of your identity, your capital S self, and you're giving it up to this ideology, to this group, to this mentality that is above you and beyond you. And I think what's so interesting about this point in history is that like the anti-fascist movement, and this is just what's in the news right now. It's really changing day to day this week. But like written on the bullets, on Charlie Kirk's bullets, was transgender, anti-fascist, something. And like these are ideologies that are rising in the West. And I have trans friends. Like, I want this discussion to happen. I want us to be able to talk about why their rights matter, why their feelings matter, why their perspective is so important, the queer mindset, why this is an important discussion in this day and age.
Yeah.
I also want to bring awareness to the fact that the way that when you put even ideologies like that, even though an anti-fascist movement is in its meaning, in its purpose, a worthwhile movement, when you put that over yourself, over the human value, over your own ability, oh, I'm getting emotional, like over your own ability to think, you are doing the same thing like ultra religious zealots, like the thing you are trying to kill, you are doing the same thing, because like the radical, they have the radical right or left, you know. It's so funny because I used to think fascism would come from the left and like communism would come from the right, but it's like flipped now. And either way, it's the same motion, it's the same movement. And I bet a lot of people might disagree with me, but I grew up in a what I would say far right, conservative, very religious environment where it was encouraged and ingrained into me to put something before my own mind, before my thought. I would have Sarah thoughts, Sarah inklings in my heart. And so often I just would numb it, turn it off, forget it, or feel even more validated and important that I could put my beliefs in front of that or above that.
Wow.
And I think that I would imagine the shooter feels like they are proud of the way that they brought awareness to the movement, and the same people who flew planes into the Twin Towers. Like the honor, the privilege of bringing the world to the same level of awareness that they have for their lives. That's so interesting, is that unless that location of real estate for you is online, connected, alive, present, then I don't feel safe with someone who can't connect to themselves in that way. And same with the heart, because that's the second location to me of rewilding the real estate within me, because real estate in some ways isn't real, right? Um, and so I was like, well, what makes it real? Like, why do we even call it real? And so the real grounding and the real heart of who you are, those are the three locations for me, like your mind, your heart, and your groundedness, your footedness, your feet, where you root into your environment, your location. Because like I said, your environment affects you far more than you affect your environment. You can steward your environment. Right. That will adapt your environment. You can join the evolution of where you're at, but the truth is it will evolve whether or not you are there. And so you are this piece of aliveness in a bigger piece of aliveness, which is why our non-human neighbors are so important. Like, do you know the species of beings that live in your backyard? Because it's not just grass. And if it is just grass, you have done too much poisoning of your environment.
That's right. That's right.
Oh, and I'm getting sassy, but I
please do. Like,
stop using Roundup. Because the whole glyphosate conversation, apparently they're using something like 10 times or 50 times, whatever, something way more poisonous than glyphosate now, because everyone's like, no more glyphosate, and good for that. But now we have another poison that it's not the one big bad. It's the same mindset. Like it's holding on to the light. We need to hold on to the light more than we push away the good. Yeah. And that's something I forget constantly, because it's easier to have an enemy and to point at the darkness and be like, you're bad. And it's like, it's the same childhood, like we're reverting back to forgetting our playground rules. It's like when you point at the big bad enemy and say that's bad, you have all these figures point back at you like, well, what can I do so that I don't feel the need to externalize or expect what I no longer want in my life? Well, it turns out I can do a lot, like put myself in more connection to the light and the goodness. And absolutely nobody I know doesn't need to do more work when it comes to their mind, their heart, and their connection to the earth and the natural world. I just glanced over at my notes and I just see stop talking, because that's the quiet part of this for me is the balance of talking and not talking. And even though this is a project of talking, I want to encourage everyone as well when it comes to this discussion of balance. Words don't solve it all. You can journal to help you figure out where you're at, what you're doing, and how you really feel. And I highly encourage that. And maybe I'm a verbal processor, so talking it out helps me realize those things too. Yeah. But like I'm turning 33 soon, and my goal is to spend 3 days in as much silence as I possibly can. And it's coming at a good time too, because like I need to get quiet right now. I have so many thoughts. And emotions that I need to return to the truth. And the truth is what comes up in the still and the quiet and the silence. When, like you said, I mean, I wrote that down, Raquel, in 2020. You said, I didn't realize there was so much I wanted to do. Like, what the fuck? Like, I told myself I wouldn't cuss on this one because
why?
I don't know, because I wanted to seem balanced. I wanted to share in a way that was really like, I don't want people to know how I feel about politics, but I want to talk about politics because I know there's a way to do that. I know there's a way to present information in a way that your opinion doesn't come through. And I want my emotions to come through, but I want to share my emotion, my true, like what I said earlier about these warring ideologies. I want a round table where we can discuss these ideologies in an open and compassionate way, where my heart actually opens to people that I didn't know I agreed with. Yeah. And I think I choose to believe that most people, and American millennials specifically, because that's who we are and who we connect with and who understands.
Oh my God.
and I want to see that in a way that kind of like rewrites the story of what it means to be an American. And
Yeah.
that kind of simplified that became at dinner last night with Justin. We had Friday night date night, pizza night. We have this great local pizza place we haven't been to in months, like since
Oh my gosh.
we bought the house. We've just been so busy doing remodel stuff. But we
Yeah.
went out and the guys there they remembered us. They're like, "Oh, it's been a while. You want this? You want this?" Not our regular stuff. But we were letting go of the shit show of the week. And I was talking about Home Scouts, which is my expedition program that I've been dreaming up for years. And I was like, I think the thing that connects everybody is I want people to show up in what it means to be what it means to be like the spirit of what it means to be an American. Like whether you were born here, whether you came here, whatever that means to you, even if it's like a terrible association.
Yeah.
I want an experience where people can lean into that identity and have an experience where they can walk away feeling a little less bad.
Yeah. Oof. Oh my God. I have a couple things.
Yeah, go for it. Because even what I said just now, I was like, that's not what I said at dinner last night, but that's a lot more clarifying for me in this moment. Because I'm like, it is a bad feeling. It's a bad feeling to be an American sometimes. I'll just say that. That's clarifying for me. I grew up a very patriotic person, but it's time to be honest. It's a shit show.
We're okay. One thing I just want to say, Libra energy coming strong, because the thing about balance and like the round table, and I'm a, what do we call this? Amateur astrologer. Like I love astrology and like
same.
what are the systems to help me understand people? And so I just say that because my husband is a Libra Mercury or something. So like the way he thinks is very Libra-esque, which is a bit, I have a Mercury in Cancer. So I come from more of a feeling thinking approach, and he comes from a more balanced and like, let's see both sides. And I'm like, I just want you to see my side. Just see my side.
Yeah. Oh, I know that.
And so it's like when everything you were saying, I was like, oh my gosh, I hear you. Like it's so hard to bring that balance because people, I just speak for myself, this need of being seen and heard. I've been telling Sarah, for the listeners out there, I've been going through a hard time with some of my personal relationships lately, and I've been working with a life coach. And one of the things that the life coach has me working on, maybe this is an overrated, overused term, but boundaries. And that's something that came up for me while you were talking, because it's so hard to think about accountability and responsibility in terms of me. Like, okay, my husband does something that I don't like. For example, I mean, I love him. I love you, but it's not it's not about that. It's like he does, it's like he has his autonomy and sovereignty, as do I. And I can only control my reaction to what he does. I can say to him, like, please do this thing or do this at this time, or can you, or whatever it is. Whether he does it or not, we can have a conversation about it. If he does the thing, I, at the end of the day, can only be accountable and responsible for myself. And I think that's so hard when what was coming to mind for me is these two different camps. Are you red? Are you blue? Are you left? Are you right? Are you this? Are you that? Are you? And it's like, first of all, nuance, because we're not just segregated in this way, but also it's like whatever that person says or does, going back to Charlie and like 9/11, all these things, it's how we react to those things that is what we have responsibility over. Like, I don't know what was going through that guy's head or going through the suicide mission people in 9/11. Like, I don't know why or how the cause became more than themselves, but I can be accountable and responsible and be aware, and the real estate of the mind and the heart and the groundedness of like what is going on in me, and what do I choose to respond to, and how, and what are my boundaries. Like, how do I want to interact? And I think that's where, at least for me, it's coming up for me now, what people struggle with is, it's like an identity thing. I have to identify with something. You don't. I mean, it's okay if you don't. You can be in conversation with something and have the boundary of like, okay, you know, let's top this off at a certain time. Let's segue. If you continue to talk to me in this way, then I will have to remove myself for my own sanity and safety. But like, it's not shut the door, bam, you're deported, you're evicted, you're fired. Like, it's not, we can just shun people, because if we do that, then the thing that also is coming to mind for me now, when you were saying we can be close to people, but we lose the closeness, we lose the it's like, I don't know how to communicate this, but it's like the opposite of groupthink. The more that we shun people who don't think like us or don't like the same things that we like, we're not, I don't know, it's this, how do I say this? We're trying to save our identity by shunning people, but in service to another group that may shun us if we also don't agree. Like, it's all this shunning going around, and losing of identities and losing of ourselves, our boundaries, when, like, it's not a question of identity, it's a question of, for me, boundaries. And the last thing, I don't know if I can make this leap, but when you said about feeling, I mean, I don't, what I took from it was the feeling of being American is like a bad feeling. So I, first generation, I talked about that in a previous episode, and it's a unique experience being born in a country where like my whole family is not from this country. They're from Central America, and going back to their home country, El Salvador. And they literally, like, there's the word called gringo, gringa, and it's not a term of endearment. Like, it's a term of like, you are other, and you are, and it's not even that, it's supposed to be for like people who are white, who are Caucasian. But it's applied to people from America, who are not of Latin, like, not, you're not born in Latin America, so you're not us. Even though I'm of Latin American descent, like, um, I get very emotional, passionate about this, because, like, just because I was born on the other side of the border doesn't make me less than. And we, like, Central America, South America are also America. They're just, you know, different parts. Like, all of this is West, of whatever the colonizers Europe were. So we're all in the West. And like, it was a really bad feeling, because I felt very othered in my own family, of like, I don't think the same way you do. I wasn't brought up Catholic. I was brought up Baptist. And even Catholicism here in this country, I'm sure, looks different than Catholicism in Central and South America. My identity with language, like, English for me is a very gumbo type fluid, like, it absorbs, versus Spanish for me can feel very segregated. It's a gendered language, has so many conjugations of things, and every country has more words to say certain things. And I'm like, just say what you need to say to me. Like, why are you complicating language? And it just feels so polarizing. And it's like, why do we need that? Like, we're already polarized enough with identities that I don't need to be a sub niche of whatever niche I already am. Like, it's just so I guess that's the connection of like, I'm so fed up with groupthink that I of identities. Like I will say I'm Latina, but I don't feel the need to say I'm first generation Salvadorian American and like no. And I don't agree with all the politics in this country. I don't agree with all the politics in other countries, and I don't feel the need to latch on. And I'm trying to not identify with things all the time, like just be in the nuance, be in the limbo and the gray, and have the boundary, because yeah, it's too much. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Well, I know we talked about like the dangers of too much identity last time.
Yeah. Yes.
And it is, I think there's something to do with the isolation there, the self-isolation. People are, like even recently we're saying, kind of expressing confusion or concern for the people who are still self-quarantining as often as they are, I guess. And so like if you like it never used to, well, it did. I remember as a kid, if so and so was sick, you don't go to their house, or
Right.
like you naturally, we kind of keep ourselves away from sickness. But to the degree that we've been scared to isolate because of that, combined with, or not scared to isolate, but like maybe more prone to isolate because of the way that was normalized in our society, on top of, well, that kind of is the solution for lots of different things that we could expose ourselves to. And the positive feedback mechanism that does keep us safe.
Yeah.
And a lot of us, because I can say this as a somewhat introverted, I can be a very introverted person. And it helps. It's a win. Like I win when I isolate, because I don't feel the pain of conflict, of people seeing me in a negative light, of I don't have these risks of feeling embarrassed. When I feel embarrassed, I don't like feeling embarrassed, which is one of the reasons I started with video content, because I'm like, it's embarrassing. I watch myself later and I'm like, I look like that, I sound like that. Or even videos I made years ago, I'm like, oh, I can't believe I used to think like that. Or like watching myself evolve on screen, right? And I think we have learned to protect ourselves from pain, and we are forgetting that pain and conflict is what forms us into a better, more mature, more complex person. And a mature adult experiences conflicted emotions.
Wow.
And can hold them.
Wow.
And I think we just we're rewarded when we don't experience that conflict or pain. But it does hurt. And if anyone relates to that, let me know, because I'm speaking from my own experience. Like, conflict is good, pain is good. To conflict that causes more pain in, I want to say like in the long term or something, but how do you measure that? And so I guess that's to hold, because in the community setting, I should say, the people who last in long-term relationships, whether it's a marriage, whether it's long-term friendships, whether it's family members that you either choose or you don't choose to have in your life. And in my grief hikes, like people who lose family members because of a difference of values or conflict that got out of hand, like those relationships can get severed, and it causes wounds. It causes scars. And whether or not that was the right choice at the time, if you can frame it properly, you grow from it. If you know what's happening, you can grow through anything. Someone told me that recently. If you know, and like, I'm going to say it again. I might have said, I feel like I'm repeating myself, but like, if you know what's happening, you can grow through anything. And I really think I said that on the last episode too. But anyway, it's because it hit me so hard. And it's like, that's part of the eyes open. open. And
Mm-hmm.
in my mind, so I think it wants to be shared. But there was a moment at work where I thought I overheard somebody crying. And by the time I realized, like, is that person crying? Like, it seemed like maybe they kind of like wiped away their tears, to like, suck it up, like, okay, I'm okay. And then I was like, should I check in? Should I not? And I actually had so much work. I had cried earlier that day. Like, I had to shut my office door and just sob because things going on, stress, personal stuff. You know, I had already had a breakdown that day. Okay. So I remember by the time I heard that, I was like, I have work to catch up on. I've already cried today. I've had to learn how to suck it up and keep moving on with my life and then my job. And by the time I kind of processed all that, it sounded like this person was like, okay, like, that, moving on. And so I didn't feel my heart pull to go connect with this person. And I keep thinking about this moment because I'm like, normal Sarah would have.
Yeah.
And does it make me a bad person for not recognizing that my heart could have been more open? Or is it like the conditioning of my environment that's making me have a harder heart?
Ooh.
And is that necessarily a bad thing because I'm there to do a job? And if that job is to be a shoulder for everyone to cry on, like, because I have that role a little bit too. Like, people have come to cried with me, and to sometimes I'm like, I don't want to be a therapist. Like, this isn't what I signed up to do. Sometimes I bring that up because it's a moment where I questioned my own humanity and wondered if, like, is the net effect good or bad, you know? And I don't know. We can't always figure these things out in the moment, I guess, except for looking back. And that's part of the balance in my own life and searching for, well, who do I want to be? I want to be the person that drops everything and is like, are you okay? I want to be a more empathetic person, someone who can sense the emotions of others, who and that's a skill, you know, like that word, actually, that's a funny word, because that's one thing that's being thrown around this week with Charlie Kirk. He thought it was a problematic word, that it shouldn't exist or something like that. And like, the definition, I think, is something like to sense the feelings of others, or like to know the feelings of others. And I've had a trauma-informed embodiment teacher help untrain me to thinking that I have control or power or responsibility over the feelings of others. So I really see both sides of this, where, like, you thinking that you have control or any sort of power over someone else's emotions, or take any responsibility for how they're feeling. Because that's another thing I told myself in that moment. I'm like, am I responsible for this person? Like, no one came to my aid when I had a breakdown at work. They expected me to keep doing my projects for them, because that's what they're paying me to do. And in the end, at the end of the day, like, that's why I'm here. I'm here to do my shit and go home, and like, and get paid. Like, so,
wow.
am I responsible? What am I responsible for? It does all, you're right, it does all come back down to boundaries and assessing where our own boundaries are, so that we have the capacity, again, that's the whole point of this, to do the things that we want to do. Wow. And I don't want to be responsible for someone else's emotions, but I do want to recognize that they're happening.
Yeah.
And I want the eyes and the heart and the connection to see it.
That's right.
That's right. So yeah, that's a good balanced conversation we've just had around, like, all the things that are going on. I think the last thing I'll say, though, I was thinking about chakras, even presenting on chakras for this, because
Mm-hmm.
the balance of not just those 3 centers that I spoke about, which I think there's a lot of traditions that really work with the 3 body centers.
Yep.
Because it kind of creates this infinity symbol of energy through the body. But the 7 chakras or the 9 chakras or the 12 chakras, whatever system you subscribe to, I think that's a good model for balance, because it's the idea that we have these parts to us, and one part is not more important than the other. It's just in a different spot. Whether it's your crown or your eyes or your throat or your heart or your stomach or your digestive fire or your root, or even down to your feet, like parts of us all have meaning. And when we turn off other people's ideologies and shut out things that make us uncomfortable, we are shutting out parts of ourselves that make us uncomfortable.
I was like, what do I do? Where's the
emoji? and at the, like, no matter how you slice it, if we my whole point in this talk today is rehumanizing our own survival.
That's right.
And all life requires burning.
Yes.
Whether it's a burning of calories, whether it's a burning of brain power, whether it's a burning of light. It is not an easy thing to be a human. And if you think that you can shut out enough little things to make your life comfortable and safe, you're missing out. And the other balance of things I wanted to bring up, like I said, my final thing is skills. And so my point with that is, like, life is hard, like, not just hard, but harder than you think it should be. And you want to practice something to help you remember that it's hard. Survival skills are a great way of doing that. And the 5 C's of survival that I will leave you with today, these are the 5 things that if you were out and you had nothing and you were like, I have to, like, shipwreck, it's just you on an island and a volleyball, like, who knows? But it's cutting. So cutting tools, what are you going to use to cut your materials, whatever it is, firewood, branches, whatever. Cutting. Combustion, how are you going to start a fire? What's the friction that's going to combust something? The cover, this is my favorite section. This is shelter. This is how are we going to shelter ourselves? The entire real estate industry exists because this is one of the 5 C's. Okay. Containers, we were talking about the importance of just the container of our conversation, the container of our project, the container of who we are, what we allow in and out, what we perceive in our eyes, what we put out with our hearts. But yeah, the physical container of how do you if you find a water source, you can't just sit there and, like, put your tongue on the spring the whole time. You need a container to carry your water, for your food, for anything. Containers is your 4th, and cordage is your 5th. So something to make string, because string is how you carry your materials. It's how you hold up your shelter. It's how you're going to, it's one of your massive tools along with your cutting tool. So cutting tools, combustion device. It can be like, think about flint and steel, but if you don't have a flint and steel, what are you going to do? Containers, cover, and cordage. So that's my little gift to you on things that you can practice to remember that survival is hard, and that you have an inherent and innate connection to your capacity to execute those skills well, in a good way, in community with people that you trust and trust you, and that make you feel safe. And you do have the power to help others feel that way too, to feel safe and loved. But it's not easy, and to think that you're just going to be surrounded by people who agree with you all the time is the delusion. So all things in balance, even conflict.
Yes. I don't want to deter. I was like, because when you said burn, what was coming to mind for me was this expression, if it's too hot, get out of the kitchen. So I was thinking about fire, and like conflict can be heated and can be hard. And so it's like, okay, you're not always in the kitchen. You're not always in conflict. You're
Right.
not always in a survival, flight, freeze, whatever mode. But it's like boundaries, get out. So anyways, I didn't want to deter too much, but I just wanted to say, I feel like we were on the same wavelength and with the fire. And yeah, thank you for your time. This was so awesome.
Thank you for your time. I love diving deep into these conversations around capacity, and each topic, it's felt so timely in our lives personally, and I feel like socially. So
yes,
yeah, I wish everyone a journey of balance into the equinox season, and honor the parts of you that are even in conflict, and allow yourself to just give them
hold,
equally,
yes,
right here, equally next to each other.
Yes. Oh, sorry. Are we gonna say the same thing? I'm so curious.
No, probably not. But I was gonna say, and when you said like you're not always in conflict, my brain went, unless you're a soldier, and if you find, I just, that, and little nugget or reminder that if you are in an extreme or in one of these things, like you are leaning into an archetype, and if you find yourself imbalanced, I know plenty of soldiers who they've done a lot of work to rebalance certain parts of themselves, because that war dog mentality is conditioned, it's trained. You execute well, you have a mission. Like I said, even my own mentality work was, listen, I got a job to do.
Yeah.
So like that is what it is, but it's not your full humanity. That's all I wanted to say.
No, you're good. Yeah. I was
awareness.
No, I was just gonna say we have a playlist to help people unzombify and be aware, get into your feelings. So check that out. We have our own Spotify playlist. So if you want more, or if you want a different type of embodiment tool or something, check that out. So yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay. And then hello and goodbye. Like, this is not over. So I'm not ending this. I don't know how to end this because it's not the end. That's why I struggle.
We'll see you for our next episode. I'm not even sure. I don't know what it is right now, but it'll be great.
It'll be great. Yes. Well, thank you.
I'm only focusing on the quality and the balance of this equinox, because holding light and dark together. So
okay. Well, on that note, holding light and dark.
That's your homework.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks.
See you next time.